I joined a Facebook group recently because I actually saw some names I knew, and it was sort of an anarchist hardcore punk thing concentrating on the late, or not the late, but that's my part of it, the 1980s. And I made a post today just asking if anyone had frequented the 1 in 12 club in Bradford back in the day, or even recently. You know, I haven't been there for 30 years, I realised. I'm getting old. And yeah, two guys kind of went, Nige? Brian? You know, and recognised each other and are having a good old chat and have found each other after 28 years. And yeah, I'm so glad I made that post. You know, seeing those things that happen, you know, just on a whim. I'm completely turned off by the whole sort of like groups thing and forums and the likes. I think that they just end up becoming cesspits in general of anger, resentment and misunderstanding. But I'm so glad I made that post. So they obviously knew each other well. They travelled together and been to Stonehenge and all kinds of things. And yeah, fantastic. Pleased to see that today. I think one of the funny sides of social media, I don't know if it's been like this for you, is seeing names or indeed receiving friends requests from people and you think, oh, I wonder how they're doing. And you accept the request or make one yourself and you get chatting and think, oh shit, that's why I haven't seen this person for the best part of 3 decades. And you realise that once a turd, always a turd in some cases. It's happened to me a few times. I know one guy who was a dealer, a drug dealer. Always had a tendency to be very aggressive. He was a nice guy underneath it all, ironically. He just had some anger issues. But he used to cause havoc in every situation that he went into. You know, his sense of humour was pretty broad. Then you could get to a point where he'd snap, not find things funny anymore. You know, you could sort of be having a laugh at his expense, he's having a laugh at your expense, and you'd say it one bit too much. You'd go past a barrier which really shouldn't exist when you know somebody that well. You know, no one had an issue with him in that way, and he'd lose the plot. He'd get really angry. Well, I think that was out of order what you just said. It was all right up to a certain point. Nobody stretched it any further. You know, he obviously just had some childhood issues that were very unresolved. And yeah, paranoia and anger kind of dominated aspects of his life. Recently, a couple of years ago I think it was, we got back in touch with each other. I hadn't seen him since 2007. And how you doing? You know, got chatting in Messenger. How do I know that's Dave? Well, there's hundreds of pictures of me, my life, my family, my daughter. What are you on about? Who was our boss, or rather, what was his nickname? Because I don't know, it's really you. And I honestly just thought, okay, I take this whole connecting on social media thing quite seriously. It's got to mean something, and I just thought, we haven't seen each other for 13 or 14 years. Let's just call it a day, shall we? And I decided to make the move and just deleted and blocked him. You know, it was just the right thing to do. Certain situations, it's very easy to forget until you see somebody let fly on social media that there's probably a reason why you haven't seen them for that amount of time, and this case was classic. Just saw a guy doing the classic of walking around Sainsbury's using his face mask as a beard. Apparently there's negligible evidence that face masks do anything, but you know, I like to err on the side of caution. It's now mandatory that you wear one anyway. But if you either wear one or you don't, apparently, putting them on your chin, you end up absolutely smearing the whole thing in quite revolting bacteria. Your chin's one of the worst places on your body for bacteria. Statistically, it's worse than the perineum, the gooch. It's just what you want from me, isn't it? Nice bit of sunny day, dirty talk. whilst out on this shopping trip today, I bumped into somebody I used to work with. Not a cat in hell's chance ever going to acknowledge me. If I was working with him on a Tuesday all day, it would be, "Here, Dave, Dave, over there, Dave. Back to the truck, Dave. Yeah, Dave. Oh, I've got a family, Dave." Next morning, as with about 90% of people who work there, you'd walk into the restroom at 6:45 in the morning. Just walk past you, wouldn't even look at you and look away. Fucking freaks, I'm telling you. The atmosphere in male working class environments is so universally toxic. It's horrible. But yeah, he was one of those people who, bless him, he wasn't a bad guy or anything, but his Stockholm syndrome was off the fucking chart. We when we were working together, we did a really tough job. It actually gave me muscles, which would give you some idea of how tough it was, and I'm just not used to that kind of crap. I was built for pleasure, I really was, and laziness, and I'm good at them. But yeah, we had a really nice supervisor, driver guy that we worked with when we were together. And he used to suck up to him terribly and use him by name and say, well, when you're not here, we do it this way, don't we? Insert name of supervisor, And he talked about him, whenever he wasn't at work, or the first time he wasn't, he said, "Dave, when so-and-so says, we do it this way, just don't listen. No one does it. He runs around like a blue-ass fly trying to impress me. As long as we're done by 4:30, it doesn't matter. Yeah, we get done by 2:30 when he's in full fly. And we've got our usual crew, but when you're here, we finish about 3:30 because you don't know the rounds and, all that kind of stuff. But, got a very philosophical attitude, very chilled out attitude. We're paid till 4:30. It's nice to get back to the site by 3:30 and finish, Quite often you'd finish and have to just sit in the restroom. They wouldn't let you go until 4:30, how weird. I think it's called job and knock it used to be, get your job done and go home. Places don't seem to do that so much anymore. But yeah, it was very interesting to see the two sides of it. I understood the poor guy sucking up to the supervisor. It's just, I understand the Stockholm syndrome better than most. I've realised that over this last probably 4 or 5 months, I've been showing complete and total, sort of like watered down variant on the Stockholm syndrome just to get through life. I do understand it, but it was funny seeing him standing there. It shows that I'm gaining a bit of strength again, that I just thought, if you think I'm acknowledging you, you can seriously go screw yourself. All those times I tried being optimistic, and there was a couple of guys who worked there who said, I enjoy working with you, Dave. You're chilled out about this, and my attitude is, none of us want to be here. Let's get it done, enjoy it, talk about what we can, and go home. And it rubbed off on a couple of people, a couple of guys there who I really like, and yeah, just that attitude of speaking all day and getting quite sort of interpersonal and finding out stuff about each other's families and then ignoring you next morning because there's a culture of we don't talk to the temporary staff, Not that I was temporary, but I was from an agency, I wasn't one of the staff paid by the management like they are. But yeah, people are fucking ridiculous, I could quite easily, I'm really being careful these days not to throw my weight around. When situations happen and, like I bump into this guy and it reminds me of all the sort of Stockholm syndrome that exists within that job, I just think, look at what you've been doing. You've not been sucking up, or I've not been sucking up, I should say. Don't like talking in the third person over this last few months, but you've pretended a situation is hunky-dory just to get through life unscathed. And you've gone and sat in your room and been really upset about stuff. But it's not worth. Some situations are so bad that if you drew attention to one thing or drew attention to situations that are upsetting you each and every time they happen, you would literally be at somebody's throat because you're so diametrically opposed to, you're so diametrically opposed to their way of thinking, their way of living. But yeah, it's amazing what you see in people's nature. I always find it funny as well seeing people I work with in their civvy clothes, So I used to seeing people in their neat little work uniforms and everything like that, and their choices that they've made of how they want to dress, I know it's very politically incorrect thing to say these days, but you can have some laughs at the chunky gold identity bracelet and the Nike Airs that you see, and painfully white clothes. I seriously wouldn't ever trust my arse to wear white clothes. Been far too many times with my fibre-rich diet where I've, in the privacy of my home, let a little fart go, and as happens to most scientists at some point when they're experimenting, you think you're dealing with a gas, and without any warning at all, this new experiment produces a liquid